Welcome to DasGeek. This is a community requested video, and one of the patrons came and asked if I could do a comparison between Arch and openSUSE. So I'm here to do that now. We're going to start in openSUSE and then we'll get into Arch, and I will go through all of the advantages and disadvantages and quirks that I see with these two amazing distros. So I've used both of them for a very long time now. Arch for a longer period of time. I'm on some odd number of months, 3-4 months of using Arch. I have absolutely no stability issues. I'm in 1 month-ish, maybe a little longer for openSUSE Tumbleweed. I've installed this not only on the Beast hardware, latest and greatest hardware I have, as well as several laptops that I have from a Dell XPS, Lenovo ThinkPad. I've installed both Arch and openSUSE on those and run them through their paces. Both have been extraordinarily stable, and that is one of the things that I want people to start thinking about. Is the old idea that a rolling distro has to be unstable is just simply not the case anymore. Now, if you have hardware that is very specific and you've got some strange proprietary driver it requires and it doesn't work correctly, I can't really speak to that. I can tell you on AMD and Intel based equipment, it works fantastic. So that's where my equipment is. If you have something similar, you will probably have the same experience. Although I know individuals who have NVIDIA and have tried Arch as well as openSUSE and have made the same claim that both are very stable. Now, they haven't always been that way. I can't really speak for openSUSE, but Arch has a reputation in the past of having some stability issues and things, but I've not run into them recently, and it seems that those stability issues they may have had in the past, they've found a way to make them to be far less intrusive. So here we have some of my notes, my personal notes as I was going through this video and working on not only for this video, but when I was looking at just in general, what was openSUSE's advantages and disadvantages, or basic notes that I was taking going through install process or different software setup. So this is actually, even though this video idea is new, these are notes taken from weeks of utilizing openSUSE here in different ways. Now, some of the things I'm going to say here you may not agree with, and that's fine. You can leave it in the comments below if I get something wrong. I'm not an expert in openSUSE. I'm pretty new to learning it, and I'm not an expert in Arch. Really, is anybody an expert in any of these things except the developers themselves? But I do the best I can here to bring you accurate information. So let's talk about rolling distros real quick here. Specifically, why would you want to run one? And so I like to go to the portal for Tumbleweed here because I think they have some interesting information. Any user who wishes to have newer packages that are available than their stable openSUSE Leap 15 repositories offer. So if you want, say, the latest OBS, the latest KDE desktop, the latest, GIMP, you can get all of that in a rolling distro much faster. As those packages become available, you can update and get them. Who doesn't want that? That's amazing. You also get the most updated Linux kernel, amongst other things. So the Linux kernel, lots of hardware getting baked into the newer kernels. In fact, I think they just added a Pro Wacom drawing tablet that is available. I think it's like a $1,500 tablet, but those drivers for those type of things are baked into the kernel now. A lot of manufacturers are putting their drivers in the kernel, including Intel and AMD. So if you want the latest and greatest support for the hardware that you have, you need to be on a rolling distro, or you have to take a stable distro and try to hack it to have those updated packages. But you're probably going to have a much more difficult experience keeping everything updated there. So one of the interesting things it points out here is what I said. Due to the Linux kernel being updated very frequently, users who rely on third-party kernel driver modules, including graphic drivers, should not use the Tumbleweed distribution unless they're familiar with updating these from source. So specifically, NVIDIA here would be an example of you're going to get lots of updates coming in very quickly. If those drivers for NVIDIA are not updating at the same time, they're asking for packages and things, maybe the older versions still, then you may get conflicts and issues. And unless you're familiar with pulling that stuff down yourself from source, you may run into issues. So some of the advantages I think openSUSE offers, not just over Arch, but in general, is it has a fantastic installer. It uses the Yast installer. It's a graphical installer. Unlike installing Arch the Arch way, which is going to take a lot of work, there's a lot of information you can learn with it as well. I think that certainly people who just want to install a system, have it rolling because they want it on the latest drivers and software available, they are going to have a much easier time with using this Yast installer because it's a graphical installer next that everybody's used to. It has a lot of fantastic defaults, very easy to use. You have the Yast admin tool. The Yast admin tool is probably one of the greatest assets to openSUSE, period. This is a complete administrative suite. I go into detail, a little more detail in this in my review of openSUSE Tumbleweed on this channel. I'm not going to spend time going through everything again here, but just know that every setting that you would need to administer your system is here. If you want to add or remove software, it is here. If you need to get information on hardware, if you need to change the bootloader to have different parameters in it, you can do that here. You can do partitioning. You can set up your Samba servers. You can do your AppArmor and firewall configurations, add new users, move them to different groups. You can also do virtualization. So you can set up virtual machines using Xen and KVM through a GUI. So if you don't know how to set those up, you're used to using something like VirtualBox. Now you can use something that's a little more close to the hardware level for virtualization, which is fantastic. You also have information on your file system here. You have your system logs here. Everything you need in one place. It's absolutely amazing. Lots of distros have tried this. Lots of distros have failed. They end up becoming more fractured because they never really convert to a single place where everything's at, or the idea of them putting everything in is just sloppy and not organized correctly, where this is just done so well. I'm just going to use a simple example here because this will bring me into something else. You can use Yast for all of your system needs. If you want to find software, install software, you can do it through here. So for instance, we search for GIMP, and you can see here that GIMP is already installed, but maybe I don't want it anymore. So I can go here and I can move that to that negative mark, and it turns red, and it's going to say, hey, we're going to uninstall this, but there's a conflict here because it says that this package Inkscape extensions requires GIMP. So it gives me some choices. Do I want to deinstall all of the various packages that rely on GIMP and get rid of it? Do I want to keep GIMP and not do this deinstallation at all? Or do I want to break the Inkscape extension by ignoring some of its dependencies? So it's giving you a choice here based on what's going to happen by removing this package. Now, this is a good idea overall, right? You want to be able to have some choice. Maybe I don't want to do this after all. I didn't realize so many things relied on it, and I have all that information here for me to look at. In a very similar way, if you update through the terminal, you're going to get prompts like this that pop up. The frustrating part, or the disadvantage of this, is that there's a lot of user interaction when you're updating your system. And in a rolling distro, when you have something like 500 to 600 packages coming in at a time, maybe you'll have, depending on how much software you put on your system, 5 to 10 conflicts like this that you're going to have to manually answer what solution you want to utilize in order to proceed forward. Now, compare this with Pac-Man, for instance, in the Arch scenario, where it attempts to kind of resolve these dependency issues for you. So some would argue, well, that takes away a lot of your control. Maybe in some instances, Pac-Man goes ahead and just breaks the package. So now you're left with software that doesn't work. So this is actually a good solution. Perhaps it is, perhaps it's not. I find it somewhere in the middle. I like having some options, but I find it probably prompts me too much, especially if you're doing a full system upgrade. And with Tumbleweed, there's updates available usually every single day, much like Arch. So, you know, in going through those prompts and trying to read through which solution I want to do, it can get a little obnoxious at times. But still, others will say, you know, they feel that that's a good thing. So it's really up to your personal preference and how involved that you want to get into your system. They also have things like patterns and package groups to install things in mass. For instance, you want to switch desktops, very easy to do. And package groups. Maybe you want to install all multimedia information. You can go here, select all the packages you want to install, and click accept, and it's going to install them in a whole package. And you can also go in here and add other things as well. So Yast is absolutely amazing. The openSUSE community is absolutely ridiculously kind. Now, Arch has a reputation of people not being kind, and I wouldn't say they're unkind, but in Arch, the Arch way is really they expect you to try to solve things yourself first before coming to them. They also kind of expect that you have a certain level experience with using Linux. openSUSE is much more open, if you will. The community is very inviting, extremely friendly. And in one case where I was troubleshooting an issue with FreeSync, and I mentioned this in my other video, somebody spent all day on the weekend trying to help me troubleshoot the issue. They didn't even have FreeSync Monitor to benefit themselves. They just did it because it was a nice thing to do. And that's kind of what you come across with the openSUSE community. Very nice, very awesome, engaged community overall. So here's an example of the forums here. So you can go, right now I'm in the hardware section. You can go in here and look at different issues and things that people are having and the comments of people trying to help them. And you can see in some cases, you have replies up to 33, 25, 12. So there's a lot of people trying to actively help these individuals with the problems that they're having. And certainly the more information you can provide from system logs and everything else, the faster this would go for a troubleshooting standpoint. You also have the openSUSE Wiki. Now, the disadvantage of the forums, in my opinion, is this login process. This uses microfocus.com. And I guess Microfocus had some business with SUSE back in the day, but this is more of an annoyance because if you go to create an account, look at all the information that you have to go through and fill in. And on top of this, then you got to go to an email and you got to approve it. And there's just so much to this process, and there's way too much information being asked for here. And I get it, I guess, from a SUSE enterprise standpoint, and openSUSE is tied to that. So if you're a business customer trying to get support on the forums, they're going to want to know information about you so they can help. But for an everyday desktop user, it just seems very corporate-y and very standard type of form that requires way more information than really what's needed. Of course, you can dummy out some of these fields and skip that, but that would be, to me, a disadvantage of their forums. The wiki is okay. It's not the best wiki out there by any stretch of the imagination. It's pretty good. It offers the navigation I honestly don't quite get. For instance, when you come here to the wiki, there's not a lot of information here for navigating to certain areas of the wiki, and maybe I just don't see it. But I would expect maybe like hardware, software, different portions of the wiki to help me navigate around, but they do have a sitemap here that you can click on once you're off that front page and maybe try to find some stuff through here. But again, these categories a little bit confusing to me to navigate, and some of the wiki subjects and solutions are not as full as, say, the Arch Wiki is. So this really comes back to us in the community that we have to contribute more to projects like this if we want it to be better. And anybody can go in right now and contribute to this wiki, which is awesome. They also have OpenQA. So this is a fully automated testing service that openSUSE has, and this helps tremendously with things like Tumbleweed, for instance. So what they do is they have a full automation suite that goes through and tests various aspects of the system and lets you know what's passed and failed. You have a pass, you have a soft fail, and you have a hard failure. So if you have an update that's coming in for openSUSE Tumbleweed and you want to make sure that when you do that update, things don't break, this would be a great place to start. This is something very unique to SUSE here, that they have this automated testing. So I can look at the latest build that came out a day ago, and I could see there's 18 failures in here, and I can get specific information as I go in through here to see what those failures are. A lot of these are probably soft failures, some hard failures, in which, I have to decide, are any of these issues ones that would hurt the current workflow or software that I utilize? I decided, there's really nothing here that's a big deal that I can't overcome. So I'll just go ahead and do all the updates. But you don't have something like that on the Arch side to see in an automated test what things work and what things may be broke. And I think that is very unique to SUSE. When you think about Arch, a lot of times you think about the AUR. This is an incredible community package system in which everybody can contribute and have software available for you to build through the AUR, whether it be proprietary or non-proprietary software like Lightworks or PAVPN GUI tool and those type of things. OBS would be the closest thing that you could kind of compare to an AUR, but they're not really very similar at all. OBS is really a packaging system for developers to go in and put their software in. It will package it up for many distros, not just openSUSE, but they can also put links to it, to that software, so people can download it from the website directly. So there are some instances where there are similarities, but really there's no equivalent to the AUR. And in fact, there is a couple pieces of software I can't get working in openSUSE initially, although some members of the community have helped. For instance, Lightworks, I could not get to work in openSUSE, but someone from the community went in and found the packages in Fedora, pulled them over, gave me setup instructions, which I have on my website, DasGeek community. So you can get those if you need them on the openSUSE cheat sheet. And you can see exactly how they were able to figure out how to work around that. But also PIA VPN GUI does not work by default in openSUSE. I can't get it to work, but you can use OpenVPN to connect to PIA anyway. So there's that option as well. But there are those are the two pieces of software that I was not able to get working in openSUSE, that I don't have that problem in Arch because of the AUR. Here's an example of the software that you can get. We're going to go view Tumbleweed here. Oops, why did I do that? We're going to click software first, and then you can see we can go into these categories. Maybe I'm looking for something multimedia related, and I can go and install this stuff. Maybe I want Btrfs music editor, and I can do a direct install right here from some of this community created software that's available out here on the web. So you do have that. Btrfs is a fantastic file system. It has a bad rap, but a lot of things in Linux do, because people have one bad experience with it and then they swear off it for life, like Rolling Distros, for instance. But in this case, I've had no stability issues or anything with Btrfs, but I have had a problem when doing full system updates, and that is specifically with Btrfs maintenance. So when it gets to the point where it's doing Btrfs maintenance, it will get to 100%. Sometimes it's like 12 or 14%, and it just gets stuck. There's something that conflicts with it in the background. In general, the times that it's happened, I really haven't had time to do a ton of investigation to figure out why, but in looking through some websites, it's not an uncommon issue that people run into. It's happened in the past, at least, let's say that, where Btrfs maintenance kind of seems to get stuck. But there's an advantage to that piece as well. The reason what's happening there with that, as I understand, is every time you're running an update, your system takes a snapshot of your system at that current point for your system files, not your personal home folder and that type of stuff, but all your system files. So then what happens is, let's say the update goes through and one of these new packages breaks something, and now your system won't get into the desktop, or a certain package won't work that you need. Well, you can reboot your machine, go to Grub, check out one of the snapshots, roll back to it before the update, and you're back up and running there. So that's an amazing advantage with Btrfs that they have built in the snapper tool for openSUSE. However, because of that, maintenance gets stuck, which is a minor issue. It can get, again, a little bit annoying doing that update. Now, one of the things that's very good in openSUSE is its recovery capability. So I can basically, when it gets stuck there, kill that command and unlock the installer and run an update again, and boom, it will go through the full installation process. But again, a new user getting stuck there, that's not going to be something they're going to easily overcome. In their case, they're probably going to reboot the machine, and you're still not going to be broke. I've not had a single instance where it broke, and run the update again and everything's going to work fine. So it has fantastic recovery options available to it when something does go wrong during an update process, and that is a huge advantage for them. Of course, we talked about KVM and the virtual machine capabilities, which I think are amazing. AppArmor and firewall setup by default is an advantage and also a disadvantage. So you have a very strong firewall built in by default, and you have AppArmor in there to keep you safe. At the same time, a lot of these profiles are very locked down. So for a new user, you go here to your interface, you set a specific zone. In that zone, you can set up services that you want to happen with the interfaces that work in that zone. This is really cool from a security standpoint and an administrator standpoint. As a home user, though, with all of these services and some of these things turned off by default, you're going to run into issues where you're trying to do something like maybe send a file, FTP a file, or SFTP a file, and it's not going to go through because you haven't enabled that service here. Or you're trying to, have certain ports connect through TCP or UDP, and they're not going to work because your ports aren't defined here to be opened. So while it's an advantage from a security and privacy standpoint, it's also a disadvantage in that a new user is going to struggle with knowing, well, which one of these 100 different options do I need to enable to get that specific service working? I mean, they're labeled well and correctly, but it's not something that's intuitive to somebody who is a desktop user right off the bat. So perhaps having a profile in here by default that, has a nice balance between it, like most distros have, where you've got your basic services most people are going to use and your basic ports that most people are going to have open as an option to choose very easily. Would be a way for them to work around that while still keeping that nice security advantage that they have. I like that they don't focus on proprietary drivers for hardware like NVIDIA, like so many other distros do. It's fine that NVIDIA is out there, but they make their drivers proprietary, where like AMD and Intel do not. They have them open source. I think we should focus more on the hardware manufacturers that are open sourcing their hardware and not the manufacturers that don't. It seems like everybody else is constantly focusing on NVIDIA. They're not seeing that the market is shifting, how much AMD is gaining. And even if they weren't, I think we should always be supporting those that support open source. This should go without saying. openSUSE does seem to also have a good relationship and partnership with AMD, which I love seeing as well. Finally, the server roots. So Tumbleweed, if you use the Leap version, they are now making it so that you can upgrade into SUSE Enterprise. Why is this advantageous? Well, at a certain point, let's say you're starting a business and you put everybody on openSUSE Leap. You're probably not going to put them on Tumbleweed in your business, but you put them on Leap and your business starts to grow. So now you need to add a bunch of more users. Maybe now you need support for all of these systems you have installed. So you can easily roll from SUSE Leap into the Enterprise SUSE, which is a huge advantage because now you don't have to redo your whole infrastructure in order to accomplish that. Additionally, if you're somebody who's interested in getting into system administration, server administration, those type of things, by taking the time to learn SUSE and learn YAST and all the ins and outs of it, and ports and firewalls and configurations and user and group management and all of those various things, you can do that here and be able to take that into a job. Whereas with Arch, there are Arch-based servers and individuals and some companies that run Arch-based servers, but it's not something you're going to see typically out there very often. You're mostly going to find your, Fedoras, Red Hats, CentOS, Debian, Ubuntu's. You're not going to see very much Arch at all. So I think that's an advantage in SUSE's corner that they do have that enterprise level. So if you learn this, there's an ability that you could take that into a career. So disadvantages, just to review, no AUR equivalent out there. There is openSUSE Wiki, but it's nowhere near the level of the Arch Wiki, which is one of Arch's biggest advantages out there. But we'll get into that when we boot into Arch to talk about it. Documentation is confusing, not always easy to find. That said, the live support is where openSUSE shines. Package management's a little more involved. You're going to have to get in there and make decisions as it's updating. But it has a fantastic recovery process. Updates can get stuck at times, we talked about, but it has a fantastic recovery ability. So a simple reboot and running the command again usually will get you out of it. Random bugs can be found more frequently with openSUSE Tumbleweed. For instance, there's been a few times that I've updated specifically with KDE, and after an update, the taskbar down here below just goes away. So it just disappears. So now I have no taskbar. So I have to Control-Alt-F to log in and reboot the machine manually because I have no taskbar to interface. So, and it's a random thing. It's a little annoying. So you just reboot, or if you log out and log back in, it's back again. But again, just a little bit of an annoyance that I don't find in Arch. We talked about the AppArmor and firewall defaults, openSUSE welcome screen. I think that's something they should add and improve in, is have a very robust welcome screen that takes you through all the various, setting options available, kind of explains YAST a little bit, and provides easy access to forums and IRC chat and those type of things for getting involved. I love the community in openSUSE. I love how open they are, whether you're coming to them about a proprietary issue or, an issue with openSUSE. They take feedback extremely well, and they're always willing to help. And that gives them a huge advantage. Two tools I can't get to work, PiaVPN GUI specifically, but I can get it to work through Network Manager, OpenVPN, and Lightworks. I can't get to work without tweaking. Otherwise, every other piece of software I use, all 50 plus packages out there on DasGeek community, work perfectly without issue. Most everything is available from the software store because most everything I use is free and open source. So with that being said, now let's get into Arch and talk about the advantages and disadvantages of Arch. Now we are in Arch Linux, and one of the greatest advantages of Arch Linux is the ability to go around and say, by the way, I use Arch. So Arch Linux, the Arch way, is a amazing distribution. Has absolutely made me just fall in love with Linux all over again. It is fast, it is stable, it is customized to my machine. Updates and things work very, very well here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually run an update live while we do the rest of this video, because why not? So let's see here. We'll run that and let that completely run through. And let's detach here. Now, one of the advantages of, I would say, Arch over openSUSE is a lot less involvement in the update process. However, installing different programs, especially if you're utilizing the AUR, you're going to want to, as a security precaution, because they are just community uploaded packages, go and check and make sure that the things that they're doing within that package make sense. You don't see anything saying mining or phoning home, and the Pacman system allows you to actually do that, to individually go in and look at the packages during the installation process and see the scripts that they're running. In this case, we're going to go ahead and run a 126 package update, and it's going to go through here and complete this, and then maybe I will take you into the AUR to show you some of what I was talking about there. So from an Arch Linux standpoint, you have less bloat because it's not trying to install everything for every possible machine out there. When you are building Arch Linux the Arch way, you're going to build Arch for your specific hardware. You're going to install the drivers you need and only the drivers you need, the software you need and only the software you need, and the desktop you need and only the programs that you need within there. The AUR provides an incredible amount of software at your fingertips. There is just, I haven't found software. People have thrown in challenges, or you can't find this, but it's very random to not find the software available either in Arch itself or in the AUR for the community packages. You have the power of the Arch Wiki, which is incredible. You have the speed of the terminal, and specifically the speed of updating your system, which is just, there's none of these questions or prompts or what if this breaks or what do you do? It's figuring all that out for you. Now, the disadvantage of that is if something breaks, then you're going to have to go and fix it yourself, versus in the YAS system where it's prompting you, you have more ability potentially to stop that. Now, we've just installed 100 or downloaded 126 packages, and now it's actually going through and completing those upgrades now. On top of that, Pacman feels far faster than Zypper as a package management. I think we've touched on that, and it's reliable. The only time I had issues with Arch in the past, and this includes Arch-based distros, was when I was running NVIDIA. With AMD, I don't have those issues at all. Again, some people say they run NVIDIA and don't have those problems either. So I guess it just depends, luck of the draw. But certainly on all the machines I have in this house, and you all know how many I have, most of them are running, all of them now are either running Arch or openSUSE Tumbleweed, and none of them are crashing. Disadvantages for Arch: the install process is highly involved. It is not user-friendly at all. And the Arch Wiki, with all of its amazing things, in fact, the fix that I put in for Pulse Audio, a lot of that investigative work was done using the Arch Wiki. The Arch Wiki can be used for any distro. It's just a fantastic resource. And we're done with the 126 packages, as you can see over here. At the same time, there are a lot of things that they leave completely out of the Arch Wiki during the install process. They either A, assume you know it, or B, they link to it somewhere in the article, but it's very quickly to overlook, doesn't look important, or the link they provide you in the article to do that particular install piece is a whole separate segment. So it's not a part of the whole installation process. So now you have to read this whole other page to figure out, where do you install it? What do you do with it? What is it? At the same time, it does provide a tremendous amount of education to you if you take the time to do it and you sit down and say, well, I'm going to enjoy this. And once you've done it, you're going to be able to start being faster and faster and faster the more and more you install it. I recommend people try to install it in a VM first, that way, or a machine that you don't need. That way, if it doesn't work, you can still continue to use your machine as you learn the mistakes and things that you make. There is an expectation of expertise in Arch Linux. If you're going to go into the forums, if you're going to go into the IRC chat rooms, they're expecting that you know how to do basic things like pull error logs, that you've tried to troubleshoot it on your own, that you've at least attempted to solve the problem through the Arch Wiki. If you can do that, generally people are very nice, and I've honestly not run across anybody who's been rude or obnoxious or anything along those lines. So in some ways, I think they get a bad reputation. There's probably a few bad players in there that sit in the support rooms to do that stuff, but I've not personally run into them. Backups or other services are required to be installed by the user. So everything that if you want backups and rollbacks and all of that, that's all things you're going to have to set up on your own. There's no YAST here to take care of that stuff for you. You're going to have to set up your own backup services. You're going to, need to manage your system. So this brings me, I think, perfectly to bring over here Arch frequently asked questions, because one of the cool things about Arch is they don't really apologize for what they are. They're just they want to keep everything as simple as possible. Some ways I think they achieve that magically, incredibly. In other ways, I think they overcomplicate things, but that's just my personal opinion. Doesn't mean I'm right. But they say you may not want to use Arch if you do not have the ability, time, desire to do it yourself GNU distribution. So if you want everything done for you and you want a rolling distro, you're probably better off with an openSUSE Tumbleweed, Solus. You require support for architecture other than 64-bit. You take a strong stand on using a distribution which only provides free software as defined by GNU. So they have access to software that's not free here. So if you're one of those people who are, GNU only, then you're not probably going to enjoy Arch. You believe an operating system should configure itself, run out of the box, and include a complete default set of software and desktop environment on the installation media. Well, then Arch is not for you. You do not want a rolling release, then this is obviously not for you. Or you're happy with your current OS, because some people come over to Arch and be like, I like, Debian better. Great, use it. Why are you here? So there's some interesting things in this wiki here for frequently asked questions and getting started. I highly recommend you check that out. Also, obviously, the Arch Wiki itself is just an incredible place for you to do research. And you can see the categories here on the main page immediately: installation guide, general recommendations, list of applications. So much more streamlined and easy to navigate than when I showed you the openSUSE wiki, which is why I think it has a direct, advantage over the openSUSE's current wiki. But that doesn't mean it can't improve over there. A lot of distros don't have any wiki at all, so it's good that both of them have it. But the Arch Wiki is kind of the top of the line. It's the best of the best, the one that everybody else competes against. So for me, I use Trizen to interface with the AUR, but maybe Brave is something we want to look for. So I can do Trizen S. So we're using very similar syntax here, and I'm going to look for Brave. And so this is going to look through the AUR. Actually, that wouldn't have worked. SS, there we go. All right, so now it's looking through the AUR, and it's found these various packages here. One is for the Brave web browser. So let's go ahead and do an install of that. And we're going to use the AUR, so we're not going to put sudo in at first. And we're going to do -s, if I could type. And we're going to do Brave. I really can't type. Brave bin. All right, there we go. So now it's cloning AUR, and see, now it gives me the option. Do I want to edit the package build? If I say yes, it's going to go in here and show me some of the package build steps that are taken here. So this would be an area that you can look through and start looking to see if you see anything that looks weird. You can see it has a nice checksum here for the package. Make sure it's legitimate. Not seeing anything here out of the ordinary that it's going to install for the package build. And you can see where it's calling out to the packages it's installing. So everything looks good. So I can control X out of that. Do I want to edit it? The Brave bin desktop? I could say yes. And I can go in here and look at this information, all the different languages. Maybe look at the type of application, the category it's installing, the new action, desktop actions it's going to take. Looks good to me. Control X. Now ask me, do I want to edit the SH file? So do I have to go through all these prompts? No, I don't have to, but it's giving me those options as a security step to basically review this information. It also gives me a full rundown of where it's pulling the packages and the AUR URL to get additional information on the packages and some of the information related to the dependencies and other things that it's installing here. And it's going to finish installing, and boom, I've got that package. This is amazing, again, for looking for software that is not easily available for Linux, but that the community has gone out there and packaged up for Linux, for Arch specifically, and then you can pull it down. So Pacman upgrades super fast. You do have the options, especially with the AUR, to look through the packages for security and things like that. And by the way, and the developers will be the first to tell you, whether it's Ubuntu, Debian, all this, none of them can check every single package out there. So there's a lot of people like, oh my gosh, AUR is so scary. And sure, more packages are going to get checked over there in those distros that are more stable, long-term support distributions. But they'll tell you there are tons of software. They just don't have the time to check every single piece of software every time it updates. So you could have trouble over there as well, which is why it's always the best security is yourself and making sure you do look through what you're installing, look at the ratings and things like that before you just go and install some random package. I've actually installed this package before, so I was familiar with it, but that just gives you an idea of how the AUR works. And I think one of the advantages of the Arch way. So now I want to show you the difference in settings. For instance, this is your basic KDE desktop environment installed on Arch. We talked about Yast being this fantastic tool where everything's together. So let me give you an example. So if I want to install software here, I may install, well, software Discover. That's it. I always get Discover and Dolphin mixed up. All right. So you may be able to use something like Discover here, but this, of course, isn't going to always work. If you've ever used Discover, you know it's kind of shoddy. Sometimes it works great, sometimes it doesn't. Let's install Color Paint, for instance, and we'll let this task go through and see if it can find it and install it. It looks like it's working here, so that's good. So that's where we would install our software, and then maybe I need to do some user management here. So now I'd open a separate application for user management, and then maybe firewall related stuff. There's proxy, no firewall. I'd have to go through network manager, set up something through the terminal. If I want to look at settings overall for the system, you just type in settings. You've got system settings, activity settings, advanced settings, add remove software, compositor settings, menu editors. See, everything is just kind of spread out throughout the system. Now, KDE does a pretty good job of, once you get into system settings, of having a lot of these options here. But again, you don't have that full power of the Yast, where you're going to be able to do user management, firewall management, user or package management all through one place. And that's why Yast is so superior to this method of dealing with your administration of your system. So those are the advantages and disadvantages of Arch and openSUSE as I see them. Arch is one of my favorite distributions of all time. I absolutely love it. I think it's stable. I think people give it a really bad name because of prior issues, but I definitely suggest you try it again. If you have no interest in maintaining your own system or learning and educating yourself on the various parts that make up a distro, then definitely check out openSUSE Tumbleweed, because it is definitely up there in my top 3 as one of my favorite distributions out because of its rolling release, because you're going to have the latest stuff, and because of Yast. It's just a fantastic open place for you to go and contribute to as well. Also, you can contribute to Arch. They make it very easy. If you want to contribute to their wiki, you can go in there and do that. If you want to get involved from the community standpoint, you can do that as well. So both of them offer that option for you. It really boils down to your preference on whether you want to go through the installation process or not. There are also Arch-based distros. I haven't used them in a long time, so it's hard for me to say I recommend one. In the past, they would run fantastic for 3 to 4 months. Then I'd have issues, although I'm being told by people I trust very much that they are running these distros like Manjaro and Arco and others and are having absolutely no problem. Everything's running smooth. So you can always check out an Arch based distro for an easy install of Arch. And there's also scripts out there that will help you kind of guide you through the Arch install if you want to do that. But I highly recommend you learn the Arch install the right way, because then you're going to know how to properly maintain your system when something goes wrong. So that's my video. That is openSUSE advantages, Tumbleweed advantages and disadvantages versus Arch Linux advantages and disadvantages. It really depends on you and your workflow, which one's better. They're both absolutely amazing. I recommend both of them highly. And especially if you're somebody who's into education, into filling your brains, then check out doing the Arch install, even if you end up staying in openSUSE Tumbleweed, just to say you've done it once and to learn all of the many things that are there to learn about it. So that's my video. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you think of these two distros. Have you tried them out recently? And until next time, get out there and fill your brains.
Don't get too small. Does not want to